Hey there, it's Rebecca from Brine House Quilts.
In this segment, I'm going to share with you how you can create an abstract watercolor like this one.
Personally, I use my abstract watercolors to help me design some of my colorful quilts. Or it's just really for pure color enjoyment. Whether you found this tutorial as a quilter or a non-quilter, don't worry, there's still time left for you to become a quilter. I hope that you enjoy this tutorial.
I'll be teaching you how to make an abstract watercolor using my Arteza brush pens and the Arteza water brush. These Arteza watercolors is just my preferred method as of now. It's an easy way to quickly do a watercolor. There's not a lot of setup involved, and in the season of my life where I'm a busy mom, this allows me to play with watercolors without a lot of setup. But what I'm going to teach you now, you can really do with any watercolor that you prefer. Before getting started, let me show you what else is on my table as far as supplies. So I've cut out a little square of Bristol paper. I like to use Bristol paper because it's a little bit more affordable than watercolor paper and it still absorbs some water. It works really well with my Arteza brush pens, but if you were to use watercolors, you might actually want to use watercolor paper because the watercolor paper will absorb more of the water. So I have my Bristol paper, I have my watercolors here, I have some washi tape, and I have some paper towel, and my reservoir for my water pen here is full up with water. So getting started, one of the first things I like to do is create and give myself a little frame to work with. So you'll notice on this finished one, I have a frame, and I do that by taping a border of washi tape around the paper. So let me do that. All right, I've got my paper all framed up and ready to go. So now I'm ready to start my abstract watercolor here. The first part is laying down strips of color, and then the second part is blending those strips of color together. Now, as I start my strips of color, I'm going to be doing my strips of color, and I'm going to be doing so leaving myself some white space around the design. So I'll be working in a kind of diagonal-ish design motif. And as I lay down my strips of color, I'm not worried about filling it in perfectly because I know the water is going to blend all that white space that you see from the paper. That's going to be blended really well when the water brush comes through. So right now I'm just focusing on painting strips or stripes of color. And these colors are really similar, so I can barely tell them apart. I'm sure on the camera they look almost identical. This one right here is a little bit darker than the first color I used. So you'll notice on my paper towel over here, I've kind of created myself a little palette. Sometimes the plastic indicators that tell you what color the pen is supposed to be, they're not always completely accurate. So I find that just creating myself a really quick swatch cheat sheet, oh my goodness, that was really hard for me to say, really helps me keep track of which color is which. And I'm trying to go in color order even though my swatch cheat sheet isn't in color order. And I can leave myself some white space in between the colors to give my color some room to bleed when the water brush comes back through. So at this point I've laid down my stripes of color, and I'm just going through and I'm going back through and I'm filling in a little bit, especially over here. I started to run out of colors and I have a little bit more white space on this side than I wanted to. So I started spreading out, which leaves more room for my favorite color, which is of course this very nice bright pink. But you can see as I've laid down my strips of color, I've left some white space in my design. So here, here, and a little bit down here. And if I wanted to, I could repeat this bright pink here. And if I repeated my bright pink over here, let me repeat my other favorite color in this design, which is this nice teal. Let me put it over here, and I'll sneak it in over here. Okay, now that I've got my strips of color laid down, my next step to create my watercolor is to go back through and blend the colors together with my water pen. So I have my full water pen. This is full of water up here. And as I push this red button here, water is going to come out down here and it's going to blend the colors together. I have a clean paper towel so I can blot the color from the brush tip as I go. And before I do that, I'm going to put some of this pale peach here. Maybe it'll help me get some coral. I love coral. Okay, here we go. One of the things that I loved as a child was painting watercolors, and I would just use my Crayola watercolor set, and I would love this part. I would love watching the colors whirl together as the water mixed in with the pigment, and I would love it, and the colors would be just so vibrant. And I would get my masterpiece done, and I would set it out to dry. And when I came back, I was so disappointed because as the watercolor dried, the pigment faded. And I remember being so disappointed, but I haven't had that same disappointment using these Arteza brushes. I really have enjoyed working with these Arteza brushes. They don't seem to lose vibrancy. And color vibrancy is something I personally love to see in my designs. And this part is just fun because the colors are blending together and it is just fun. I love this part. It makes my soul happy. Sounds kind of woo-woo, but it is true. So as I get to this point, most of the colors up to this point have really blended very nicely. When I get to this point from the blue-green to the yellow, there's a bigger jump in hue. And so at this point, I need to decide if I want to blend these two hues together or if I want to kind of blend this side and not let these yellow and the teal touch. I think I'm going to go ahead and blend them and see what kind of colors I get, surprising colors. I think that'll add to my design. So instead of cleaning my brush, I haven't really done that at all, I'm going to let the colors meld together. And the paints are going to mix together naturally, and I'm going to end up with some really pretty results, I hope. Okay, at this point I am going to clean my brush up a little bit as I move into the peach portion. And I'm letting the pigment kind of creep into the white space over here. And as I go through, I might add a light pink instead of the white in my final design. I love using really pale hues as my neutrals. Okay, at this point I've got all my color stripes blended together. My next step would be to go back through the design and maybe add in some more water to blend things more, or I might go through with my pens and make the color more saturated. So let's see, just looking at the design, there's nothing that's really standing out that needs to be brighter or more saturated. Here I might go through and add in, yeah. So I'm just going through this color section. I'm just adding in some more marker to give myself some more pigment, which is going to saturate this section a little bit more. And it really depends on what you're looking for in your final result, whether you want it to be really pale and bleeding, really smudgy, or if you want more saturation. It's really up to you. Just have fun and play. And remember, this is just paper, and if you don't like it, you can start over. So you might need to run through a few iterations before you find a color scheme and an abstract watercolor that really hits home with you. But just have fun and play at this stage and really enjoy the watercolor experience.
All right, that is my general process for making an abstract watercolor. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and have a lot of fun making your own abstract watercolor. If you'd love to learn more about quilting or quilting in color, I'd love for you to go to playfulcolor.com to find out more about me and my colorful quilts and how you can learn how to quilt in color. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button before you go. And if you end up making an abstract watercolor using this tutorial, I would love to see. You can tag me on Instagram or Facebook at Bryan House Quilts. That is all for me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.